Too long? Too short? Too English? Here's why some fans are complaining that Avatar 2 is only around to set up sequels. The choice to cast Sigourney Weaver as a teenage Na'vi character in Avatar: The Way of Water left Avatar fans divided, to say the least. Some fans had no problem accepting Weaver in the role of a teenager. As one person tweeted, "I honestly love James Cameron for casting an older woman in the role. We have accepted way too much ageism in Hollywood." Yet for many others, the motion capture was only convincing until Neytiri opened her mouth. Despite Weaver's best efforts, it's apparently difficult to pass the voice of a 73-year-old woman as a 14-year-old girl. However, a lot of fans just weren't fooled. As one fan said, "I'm sorry, Sigourney Weaver is a great actress, but she does not work as the voice of a kid."
Ugh. Who's got my damn cigarette?
The fact that there's a narrative reason behind this casting choice only slightly alleviates the bizarreness of seeing a teenage Sigourney Weaver. Canonically, Neytiri has been confirmed to be the daughter of Grace's avatar, so it makes sense that she would sound just like her mother. And perhaps she's more than just Grace's daughter. As one Reddit user speculated, could Neytiri be some kind of reincarnation of Grace facilitated by Eywa? If so, then the casting choice makes a lot of sense.
Jim Cameron says I'm very immature, and this should be right up my alley.
Jake and Neytiri were undoubtedly the protagonists of Avatar, but with the second movie, their role is a little more complicated. Jake is certainly central to the plot. He's the one with the target on his back, and his decisions kick the story into motion. But for a main character, he doesn't get a lot of screen time, nor does Neytiri. Den of Geek observed, "For much of the middle section of the movie, Jake and Neytiri themselves are strangely passive. Their role in the second act is mostly just to react to what their children have been doing. Jake and Neytiri both take the back seat for most of the film, letting their kids do the driving. The Sully children, especially Loak, Kiri, and Spider, are main characters in their own right, and they get plenty of wonderful character development. However, many fans still miss Jake and Neytiri. Some were especially disappointed by Neytiri's limited screen time and felt that Neytiri barely left a dent in the sequel. One person tweeted, "She screams and fights, but if her dialogue reached 50 words, I'd be surprised." Still, fans were at least glad that Neytiri absolutely stole the scene when she finally got a chance to shine in the final battle. Jake and Neytiri weren't the only characters who got the short end of the stick. The film has a gigantic cast. With 2 parents and 5 children, plus several more humans and Metcaina, something was bound to slip through the cracks. On a Reddit forum about the movie, one user complained that, despite all the buzz about Kate Winslet joining the cast as Ronal, her character wasn't given much to do. And while the story didn't strictly need more scenes with Parker Selfridge, some fans actually missed his presence. One fan wrote, "A little bit disappointed Selfridge was just a cameo. I thought a business suit type was a nice yin-yang dynamic with the military in the first movie."
You see that?
Yes, sir.
No, you didn't. You were looking at the monitor.
Even characters with a lot of screen time like Loak feel underdeveloped. As one fan noted, the film could have been even better if it spent a little longer on Loak growing to become friends with his former bully. Perhaps the movie's biggest sin is neglecting to develop Neteyam, since it's the last movie where the character will appear. As far as one Reddit user was concerned, "I felt more sadness about the death of the whale and her calf than about Jake's oldest son dying." If something seemed a little bit off while you were watching Avatar: The Way of Water, that's probably because you noticed the movie's frame rate. Most movies are shot at 24 frames per second, but The Way of Water was filmed at 48 frames per second. As James Cameron explained, "We're using high frame rate to improve the 3D where we want a heightened sense of presence, such as underwater or in some of the flying scenes. For shots of just people standing around talking, high frame rate works against us because it creates a kind of hyperrealism in scenes that are more mundane, more normal." Viewers have said that the frame rate made the film look like a video game or a soap opera. Meanwhile, The Verge compared it to watching, quote, "a very expensive video meant to be played on an array of televisions in a Best Buy." Some fans were comfortable with the 48 frames per second, but felt it was distracting when the film switched back to 24 frames per second. One Reddit user pointed out that the film would often toggle back and forth between different frame rates within a single scene. They wrote, "If that sounds jarring, that is because it was." One thing fans wanted to see more of was the Recombian soldiers, recoms for short. Supposedly, Quaritch, Wayne Fleet, and the other recoms are a close-knit bunch of soldiers who knew each other before they were reborn in Na'vi bodies.
I know you're all asking yourselves the same question. Why so blue?
But viewers may have a hard time buying that, because Quaritch's buddies get zero character development. Furthermore, fans argue that the recoms don't seem like much of a threat. Jake and Neytiri managed to take them out almost single-handedly. Other fans shared this sentiment, with one saying, "I loved the idea that the RDA is using native fauna to slip past Eywa. I was looking forward to seeing them adapt more to their Na'vi bodies and figure out the advantages, but they just kind of did what any 6-foot human could have done. While there's still a chance that the recoms will get more development in future movies, some fans may not want to wait that long. Many fans watching Avatar: The Way of Water were wondering why there was so much English spoken as opposed to Na'vi.
I see you.
When the sequel begins, Jake is considered one of the Na'vi and speaks their language, so shouldn't the movie have been entirely in the Na'vi language with English subtitles? The film does offer an explanation for the switch, even if fans feel it's a contrived one. Jake explains that he has become accustomed to the native tongue, saying that it might as well be English, and that's when the audio switches to English. One Reddit user wrote, "I understand why they did it, I just thought it was done without finesse." The subtlety of the linguistic switcheroo aside, there's one particular aspect of the dialogue in Avatar: The Way of Water that has elicited a strong response from fans, and not a good one. For some reason, the teenage Na'vi characters use slang words like cuz or sick, and the word bro is spoken several times, like all these aliens learned English from 2000s era comedies.
Sweet! What about mine? Dude, what does mine say? Sweet! What about mine? Dude, what does mine say?
According to some Reddit users, the slang is cringeworthy because it doesn't seem in character for the Na'vi. One fan on Reddit offered up an explanation, pointing out that the Na'vi probably aren't literally saying bro, rather they are using the Na'vi equivalent, which probably sounds less ridiculous, and it is translated for viewers, just like everything else the Na'vi says. As one user said, "I just took it as when they're speaking English, it's Jake's interpretation. It makes sense. Jake may have many fine qualities, but he's never been a wordsmith."
Well, here I am, doing science.
Mostly, Redditors wish the filmmakers had taken the time to develop an equivalent Na'vi word with a similar connotation, instead of relying on bro all the time. There's one thing fans and critics mostly seem to agree on: Avatar: The Way of Water is a little too long. Certainly the first Avatar in Cameron's previous filmography set a precedent. Remember the double VHS set that held Titanic's titanic 3-hour and 14-minute runtime?
I don't see what all the fuss is about. It doesn't look any bigger than the Mauritania.
You can be blasé about some things, Rose, but not about Titanic.
Still, many fans think Avatar: The Way of Water had no business being 3 hours and 12 minutes long. One person wrote on Twitter, "The ending runs a bit long and the story doesn't justify it." The runtime has even alienated some moviegoers who enjoy watching super long epics. As one Redditor said, "Mind you, I regularly watch the Lord of the Rings extended editions. I'm no stranger to long movies, but Avatar 2 really drags." In response to criticism about the movie's length, James Cameron told Empire magazine, "I don't want anybody whining about length when they sit and binge-watch television for 8 hours." Fans, you can't please them all the time. For every viewer who thought the movie was too long, it seems there's someone else who thought it wasn't long enough. Despite the film's lengthy runtime, one Reddit user argues that the movie's pacing often feels too fast rather than too slow. Cameron tries to rush quickly through the first act to get Jake and his family to the Metkayina clan as quickly as possible without giving the characters time to breathe. We barely get to see Jake mourning what he's leaving behind. For one Redditor, the movie is actually strongest when it takes its time. They wrote, "The downtime is what makes Avatar so special in my opinion. I come to these movies for action and thrills, yes, but also just to be immersed in an alien world." Of course, some fans think the movie didn't need to be longer, but still wish that Cameron had cut a few subplots, so that the filmmakers could focus on the most important storylines. Another person took to Reddit to say, "It's clearly a project of deep passion and love, and I respect that, but I think that passion also resulted in too many ideas being crammed into a runtime that was already bursting at the seams. In other words, the 3-hour running time might have been better spent on further development for the main characters." While there is nothing in Avatar: The Way of Water as obvious as the Infinity Stone scenes shoehorned into Avengers: Age of Ultron, there are still several plot threads introduced in this movie that won't reach a satisfactory conclusion until later in the Avatar saga. For many fans, this is infuriating. One person tweeted, "Biggest issue, feels like a stepping stone for what's next." Likewise, a Reddit user was frustrated that the valuable substance extracted by humans from the brains of the Tolkien that they brutally hunt down was relevant for one scene and then forgotten for the rest of the movie. As for the main characters, it seems like Kiri in particular won't get much payoff until the sequels. Other fans wish the film had explored why Kiri had a special connection to the Awa and has seizures underwater.
What does Awa's heartbeat sound like?
Mighty.
One Redditor concluded, "So much is left unresolved to bait for sequels I'm not invested in." Yet not everyone felt this was a problem. As a Redditor explained, Some very central and important characters are basically only tagging along, while some other important characters get almost all of the spotlight. I'm sure these characters will be given their moment in future films, so I will withhold final judgment. Thankfully, fans won't need to wait another 13 years to see the payoff. Avatar 3 is projected to come out in 2024.